Okay. So here's another challenging word problem. So let's read it. Remember, we always have to read it first. I love it. I was tutoring a kid and he's just like wants to just take the numbers and start doing stuff with them. He has no idea what the problem is about. Read it. He's like, oh yeah, I have to read it. Yes, I have to read it. Okay, a store has some dried beans selling for $2.75 per pound and some dried vegetables selling for $3.60 per pound. The store plans to use them to produce 25 pounds of a mixture of the two that sells for $3 per pound. How many pounds of dried beans and how many pounds of vegetables can be used? So what is step one? Step one is always the same, and I see a lot of people forgetting to do step one. Step one is to, yes. So if you're going to use X and Y, you could use B and V if you want, beans and vegetables. Some people do. I actually saw some people's that had B and V as the variables, but whatever. I'll use X and Y. X represents what? It's the, yes, pounds of dried beans. Sure, I love that. At $2.75 per pound. That's a lot of information. That's great. Okay. Y represents then the pounds of dried veggies at $3.60 per pound. Okay. Now, along with step one, I kind of want to like understand the question. So maybe I'll draw a little picture. Here's a bag of beans and vegetables. Okay. Some portion of them are beans at $2.75. Actually, that's X. Look, I could define the variable on my picture. And then Y is the veggies at $3.60 per pound. And I probably should put a money sign, right? So I don't know how many pounds of each, but do I know anything about the pounds of the bag? It's 25 pounds. So the total here, total 25 pounds. So what do I know? If I know that I have pounds of beans and pounds of vegetables together, if I add those two sets together, I'm going to get 25 pounds. So that's step two, is write your equations, right? Equations. So that's one equation. In a system of equations, we have to have two equations. The second equation is much harder. But do you see how the first equation is like, well, I know if I put, if I make 10 of these pounds beans, then I would have 15 pounds of vegetables, right? And we could actually go through, that's back in Math 60. Do you remember how you would just use a table and you would say, and you would be like, okay, 1 pound of beans, 24 veggies, 2 pounds of beans. I can't do math anymore. 23 veggies. You see what I'm saying? No pounds of beans. But we have another scenario, which is that I know that the veggies cost a lot more than the beans. And so this is, $3 is not even halfway. Usually this is the same thing with like cashews and peanuts, right? Like one is, remember when we did the cashews and peanuts problem? One is way more expensive than the other. So like when you get a mixture of nuts, don't you usually get a lot of the cheaper one and only a little bit of the more expensive one? Okay, so this is sort of the same situation. Now, we know something else. We know how many pounds of beans altogether and vegetables, how many pounds total. We also know something about the price. So every pound of bean costs $2.75x, right? $2.75 times the number of pounds of beans plus $3.60 times the pounds of vegetables is going to give us a total price. How much, if this whole bag is 25 pounds and sells for $3 per pound, how much does that bag, what's the value to us of the bag? $75. Where do you get 75 from? 25 times 3, because if you only have 25 pounds here, you don't really take into consideration the price. The price is $3 per pound. So total, this bag has a price tag. Oh, look, I can put a price tag on it of $75. And that's where you have to go a step further. Once you have that set up, that's the hardest part really, is the setup, isn't it? Once you have that set up, and by the way, I wouldn't put 25 times 3, but I just want you to know where the 75 came from. So I'll replace that with 75. Then you can do the substitution. So you have to have two equations. This is your first, it's about pounds. The second one is about price. And this one is about pounds. Total pounds, total price. Okay, then you can substitute one into the other. In order to do the substitution, you have to get one of the variables by itself. When you look at both of those equations, which one seems like it would be the easiest one to get a variable by itself? X by itself, or the first one? X? There's an X here too. You mean Y? Okay, well, let's just pick equation one, obviously, right? Equation 1. What would you do to get one variable by itself? Minus X. Okay, so you want to get Y by itself. So this is step 3. Step 3 is to solve. So we took X away from both sides, 25 minus X. And now we've set that one equal to Y, so we have one variable by itself. And now why did we do that? We're setting ourselves up to do the substitution, right? Substitution. So we're going to substitute Y equals 25 minus X into equation number 2. So that looks like here we have this is equation number 2. And this is going in for Y. So I leave 2.75x plus 360 times 25 minus x equals 75. Does everybody see that substitution? This right here was what got substituted in for Y. So that's the substitution. Why did we do that? What's the whole point? What's the purpose? What am I setting myself up to do now? Yeah, now I have an equation in one variable. See, when there's two variables, you actually have an infinite number of solutions when there's two variables. What we're trying to do, we're trying to narrow it down to one ordered pair. Like, I need to know how many beans, how many vegetables do you want me to put in this mix, right? Okay, so now what are we going to do? We're going to solve for x. We're going to use the, I love that, distributive property, 275x plus, I don't know what 360 times, what's 3.6 times 25, my calculators? 90. Oh, that wasn't too bad. 90 minus 3.6x, can I do that? Equals 75. Do I have to put the 0 on the end? No. Now what should I do to get x by itself? Yeah, combine our like terms, right? So this minus this, and I'll also, just because to save space, I'll also put the 90 on the other side so I can get rid of it, right? So what's 275 minus 360? Yes, and isn't it negative? And this equals negative what? 15? So that's okay that they're both negatives. And it's okay in the next step you're going to get decimals. That's okay too. Because you don't have to have exactly a pound of something. You can have half a pound, 85% of a pound. So I didn't ask you what to do next. Oops, there's no x here. But I'm assuming you wanted me to divide, right? X equals, I should have asked you, okay, what is it? 15. 6.5, is that rounded? Okay, so that's okay, we're rounding. So that's how many pounds of beans we want. We want more beans to drive the price down on the vegetables, right? And then if we just go ahead, so now we need our checks. So we need to know how many, this is how many dried beans, and then we'll have 17.65 plus y equals 25 to figure out how many vegetables, right? So how many vegetables? 7 point what? 35. Okay. So now I would want you to also check it. Do you know how to check it in the last one? Do you know what I mean by checking it? You do? I'm running out of room, but for the check, I would put both of these numbers in for my second equation there. So I put 2.75 times 17.65 plus 360 times 7.35, and it should give us 75. So if you plug all that in, and then you also want a sentence answer. So sentence answer. So realistically, I always want you to check in both. That's very important. But if I go ahead and put these numbers back in my first equation, it should give me the same thing because that's how I solved for y. So I only really have room here to check in the other one. But since I solved for y in the first, then I have the same x and y. I'm plugging it into the second. So that's why it's important just to be careful to make sure, because a lot of times people will only check it in the first one. Well, it's like you already found the answer in the first one. Yeah, both. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yes, I want it both. And I don't have a calculator on me. I should, but you guys can just plug it in the rest, and then you'd want to write a sentence answer as your final step. Okay, any questions about that?